Just for the record, it's about 53 novels and over 100 short stories. I corrected that on the proofs, and Del Rey ignored it. I need to talk to somebody over there. And Thrawn is the 11th Star Wars, if anybody's counted. I imagine some of you are counting. What we're going to do is I'm going to tell you a little about how this whole thing happened, and then open up for questions, and about 7:45 we will go ahead and start signing. So think of your questions, because if you don't have any, I'm going to sing, and you don't want that. September 2015, a year and a half ago, my wife and I were at Salt Lake City Comic-Con, and as often happens, found ourselves at dinner with another writer or two or three. And as sometimes happens, in that group was Pablo Hidalgo, member of the Star Wars Lucasfilm Story Group, somebody we've known for 20 years, probably at least, 20, 25 years, back to the old days of West End Games and my work with them on the original Thrawn trilogy. And as authors are wont to do, during the course of the conversation, a couple of us mentioned, you know, Pablo, we're available for more Star Wars books. You know. And Pablo did a which Lucasfilm trains all its employees to do when they're not supposed to talk about anything. So a couple of weeks later, got an email from Lucasfilm saying that they'd like to bring me down to the Presidio, Lucasfilm now in San Francisco, and chat with Dave Filoni about Star Wars. Chat with Dave Filoni about Star Wars. Okay. This emails back and forth. Turned out, with the schedule I had for the next couple of months, the earliest we could get me down there was middle of November. On my way actually to Irvine, California for discussions with Blizzard about the new StarCraft book. So we're getting notes back and forth. I'm getting small hints. Okay, Filoni's going to be there. Some of the story group is going to be there. The book editor, Jennifer Heddle, is going to be there. They blocked 2 hours. Dave Filoni does not have 2 hours to block for chatting about Star Wars. So this is already starting to sound a little bit odd. And I keep nudging, you know, can you tell me what this is all about? I just want you to come and chat and maybe talk about a new book. So I get to San Francisco, meetings the next day, I'm getting my luggage, check email one more time. And here comes the clincher. Oh, by the way, there may be a film crew there. Is that okay? Film crew. While we chat about Star Wars. Okay, something is up. I don't know what, but it's up. So they got to Lucasfilm the next late morning. They took me to lunch, which I was really too nervous to eat. Took me to the Jen took me to the conference room for lunch, and then she disappeared. Took me to the conference room, and then disappeared off to do her own stuff. I'm alone in the conference room, except for the film crew, which is setting up and everything. Okay, the table is set like this. Up here are all the bottled waters and snackage things, so that's the head of the table. Okay, I'm going to sit down here until I hear what's going on. People start drifting in. Story group, Jen comes back, Pablo comes in, Leland Shee comes in. I ask Leland, do you know what's going on? And he said, oh yeah. And I'm thinking, great, Leland. One of these days, I'm going to know something you want to know, and I'm not going to tell you either. We've known Leland almost as long as we've known Pablo. And I think it was Leland that said, let's move up closer to the head of the table. So here's the head of the table, right here, this corner spot, right there. Okay, that's where the cameras are aimed. Okay, ominous. I know I'm not in trouble because nobody flies in California to yell at you. They do that on the phone. But I still have no idea what's going on. So the rest of the story group starts filtering in. It is typically, and in fact almost invariably, it is, hi, I'm so-and-so, big fan. Okay, good. The crowd's on my side, whatever's going on. Carrie Hart, I think she's the head or close to the head of the story group, and one of the top people comes in, sits down, kind of at half the head of the table, and Dave Filoni comes in, finally sits at the other half, two of them at the end of the table. And then finally, Dave drops the bombshell that Thrawn is going to be a major villain in season 3 of Rebels. I don't exactly remember what I said, but I think it was something like the internet is going to melt. So we talked for a few minutes about that. They took me down to the screening room and showed me a little clip, the clip of Thrawn and Governor Price walking into the Star Destroyer for the first time, with a conversation with Constantine. I don't remember if Callus is there or not. And then showed me some of the concept art, some of the uniform details, animation, stills, and everything they've been doing. Then they took me down to the Rebels bullpen. I got to meet everybody and just see how the production team was going. They were working on the various animation and such that they were working on, not season 3 at that point. Then I went back upstairs with Jen Heddle, Sarah Pete, who's editor at Del Rey. She wasn't the editor on Thrawn, but she was the editor on the StarCraft book, and so she was on her way to Blizzard with me to discuss that. Michael Stiglane and I guess just the 4 of us. And they said, we'd like you to do a new book, a prequel to where he shows up in season 3. And I'm trying to think what kind of title, and Michael said, I see the title is basically Thrawn. Okay, works for me. We've had a Tarkin, a Kenobi, this is good company to be in. Yeah. So we discussed the whole thing, discussed timing, when they would need it by. Okay, it looks great. They're talking about a September 2017 release. Okay, I've got plenty of time with other commitments. Go back, work on a different project over the rest of the weekend, fly down to Blizzard Sunday, and then work on that. Someplace along the line, they decided we're going to do an April release instead, because that's when the season 3 will just have concluded. Let's just bring it out in April rather than waiting September, which chops 2 or 3 or 4 months out of my schedule. Turned out to be no problem, but that was okay. That's April. Yeah, I can do that. And sometime after that scheduling was set, Lucasfilm and Disney, bless their hearts, scheduled Celebration for 2 days after the book's release. Del Rey had not known that was coming. The timing could not have been more perfect. Celebration was great. I signed over the 4 days, probably 14 to 15 hours. They were tapping lines an hour before I was scheduled to start. It was a madhouse, but a great deal of fun. Fortunately, you've got books here now. They ran out 3 times at Celebration. They also ran out in Chicago, C2E2, which I went to, and apparently they ran out, at least for a while, at the Star Wars launch bay in Disney Hollywood Studios, because we had seen the stack, chatted to the people working there. A couple of days, was it next day or a couple of days later, when Anna and Corbin, they had a couple more days there, came in, that stack was gone, the others had been pushed a little bit together to show, to hide the fact that there used to be other books here. So, fortunately, as I say, you've got books here. So that is where things stood. How many of you have not seen all of season 3 who intend to see it? Okay, and how many of you have not read Thrawn who intend to read it? Okay, so no spoilers from everybody. Okay? No, seriously, we don't want spoilers. But I will say that I was very pleased with what Dave and the team did with Thrawn in Rebels. I think they captured not just the character himself, but kind of, it's an overused term, but kind of the meta around him. Those of you who've seen it, I could explain in more details, but again, spoilers, so we won't do this at the moment. Will there be more books? I've got 2 sequels pitched to Del Rey. They are interested. The proposals at the moment are wending their way through Lucasfilm and also have to be passed by the story group and also the Rebels team, because they need to see if I'm going to be bumping into something they've got planned for season 4. It's been pulling hen's teeth to get stuff out of them about season 3, which I needed because as the book is a prequel, I want to be able to set things up to see later in the timeline in season 3. not being a Lucasfilm or Disney employee, they're a little reticent to give me scripts and such, but the Rebels team's been kind of sneaking them to me wherever they could. So I've been up to date enough that I think pretty much everything that was in the season that I wanted to foreshadow has been foreshadowed in the book. So, okay, so that's life for the last year and a half. Now we're doing these things. Anna has, yes.
Number 2 on Sunday.
Oh, this Sunday will be number 2 in the New York Times bestseller list. This newcomer, James Patterson, is holding the number 1. Which I got word that people at Del Rey were shaking their fists at him. However, back in '91, I kept John Grisham's The Firm out of number 1 spot in Heir to the Empire, so it seems only fair. Sounds like this Patterson guy will go places. So anyway, anything else I should be telling you, or just open it for questions? My wife has half my memory. So let's go ahead and open for some questions. What do people want to know? You don't want me to sing. Okay, way back in back.
Oh, me?
No, behind you.
Okay.
Yeah. What's it like to be an author?
I'm sorry, speak up.
What's it like to be an author?
What's it like to be an author? There are a lot of good things about it. There are some, not as good things. I don't have any kind of medical insurance through my work. The only days off I get are the ones I take, and I don't get paid for those. I only get paid for what I turn, what I write and then what I turn in. On the other hand, it's a very flexible schedule. I can work my own hours. As I'm partway through a book, nearing the end of a book, and I start picking up speed on writing, I will wake up at sometimes 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and go to my office and work for a while. I can't do that with a normal, regular type job. You get to come and talk to people like this, which is kind of cool. You get stormtroopers and Imperials and Rebels on your side, which is extremely cool. Stormtroopers are really great at cutting down hecklers, so... I did that. So, it is harder than I think a lot of people realize. Coming up with ideas will take a week, maybe, coming up with an outline for a book. Then comes all the work of translating that idea into a coherent story that makes sense with characters the readers can identify with, or at least sympathize with. Pacing the whole thing to not to drag in spots, not to be too rushed, and come to a conclusion that is satisfying to the reader. Basically, when you buy this book, I owe you $29 worth of entertainment, plus the hours you're going to spend reading it. And I've got to do my very best to deliver that much entertainment. So it is a little bit scary sometimes, especially when people are anticipating a book. But overall, I would not want to do anything else. Okay, other questions? Yeah.
So I'm assuming he's coming back in season 4 of Rebels, but has there been any talk about anything beyond that, besides the 2 books you were talking about?
The question for those of you who might not hear it is Thrawn back in Rebels. Is there anything else planned for him? We know he's in season 4 because we saw the trailer at Celebration. There are a couple of spots where he is definitely there. Season 4 is the last season for Rebels, so what they have planned next, I don't know. Dave Filoni was recently, I think, promoted to head of animation division or something, so clearly they're doing more stuff. We just don't know exactly what is next, and whether Thrawn would fit into that, or whether it's in an era that really would work. So all we know is that he is in season 4, and I've got 2 books proposed, and that's it at this point. There'll be updates, as things happen, and we're allowed to talk about it.
So what was it like to as I'm sure you were watching Disney Rebels and you were hearing
the voice and the sort of body and the character come through. What was that experience like for you?
It was the experience of watching Thrawn and Rebels. I think they did a terrific job. Again, his behavior, his analysis is all right on the mark. The voice they chose, the voice actor Lars Mikkelsen, is absolutely perfect. Being as he's Danish and not a native English speaker, there's no accent, but there's just a little bit difference in delivery, tone, maybe a little bit of intonation that's not English or American, and it is perfect for Thrawn. And he's got the gravitas. One of my favorite parts of the whole show was his little monologue, his little time with Terra. You know, I study war as art, but it is forged you. And just the whole feeling of, I understand you. I understand who you are and what you are. You're still my enemy. I'm going to destroy you if you get in my way, but I respect you. You don't get that from any other Imperial officer in the movies, typically. And that's, I think, one of the things that makes Thrawn so appealing to readers and viewers. He's just so different from everybody else. So yeah, I was very pleased. It's great fun to be sitting there, zapping through a commercial, looking at my wife and saying, "Oh, that's right. You don't know what happens next." Because they gave me access to scripts where he was a major character or a major player. So probably bugged her a little bit, but it's only a half-hour show. Okay, there was one back there.
How much creative freedom were you given with your character compared to when you first created him?
The question is how much creative freedom now versus back at the.
Like his character, his.
Largely, it wasn't a lot different. Heir to the Empire, the Thrawn trilogy, I had a completely clean, empty canvas because those were the first books allowed to take place after Return of the Jedi. Dark Horse was doing a comic series at the same time, but these were the first things. So I had to fit guidelines. They would say, okay, we don't think this is quite Star Wars, tweak this. But I wasn't going to run into any other authors or anything else that was now established in the Star Wars universe. As books and comics and games and everything kept going, the canvas started filling in. It was harder to find a good spot where you could work without running onto somebody else, and harder to find something that hadn't been done before. Now with the new, it's not a reboot, it's just with all these things now kind of off stage as legends. Think Legend of Robin Hood. You still like reading about Robin Hood, but he probably didn't exist. So don't panic about that. It wasn't the expanded universe wasn't destroyed. It's just off camera someplace. We can go into that a little more later if you want as well. The biggest thing now, as opposed to writing in the 90s, is the story group. Back in the 90s, when we were writing, Bantam and Lucasfilm and the authors were trying to keep continuity. The problem was none of us at Lucasfilm knew everything that was happening. Bantam didn't know exactly what the comic book people were doing, or the game people, or anybody else. So there were some distinct continuity problems. There are 2, possibly 3 instances of Han winning the Falcon from Lando with, I think, 2 to 3 different dates. And Lucasfilm had to pick one and say, okay, that's the real one. With the story group, we now they have a feel they've got handed everything. They know everything that is happening. So, for example, when I turned in the manuscript for Thrawn, one of the comments was, okay, you've got TIE fighters at the beginning of this book. They don't exist yet. So we use a different starfighter. We recommend this one. TIE fighters will come into existence about midway through the book, and you can start phasing them in then. So there's a continuity thing that, okay, this works very well. On the flip side, we had a walk-on character who was basically in one chapter, and they said, this name is very similar to something showing up in a different project in the near future. Can you change it so there's no confusion? Absolutely. And I like having this safety net of they're watching everything. I'm not going to run into anything because they're guiding my steps. So I'm still working into what else is being done, but we've got a much more efficient system for doing that. That's one reason why these books are still, the proposals are still working their way through that. They've got a lot of other stuff they are dealing with and watching. And I have very little doubt that they'll say no. It may be we'll have to tweak some things or readjust where in the timeline it goes. But they're good at giving suggestions on that as well. It's not just it doesn't work here. It's a doesn't work here, but if you shift it by about 6 months and put it on this part of the galaxy, it should work fine. So all the constraints are still, it's got to fit in with everything Star Wars is doing, but we've got better control over that.
Okay. Very long answer.
Fans are clearly happy that Thrawn is back, but when you were first announced when Thrawn was coming to Rebels, if they told you they wanted Thrawn back in the Star Wars universe, would you have preferred him in his original timeline, or would you keep him in between the three?
Well, what's nice about Thrawn, where he is now, is I haven't written him in that part of the timeline. I had Outbound Flight, I had the Missed Encounter story, and then we picked him up between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back with Allegiance and Choices One. So this is the period where he was never written before, which means I don't have to overwrite anything or eliminate anything I've done. The games did some other things with him, and they told me I didn't have to coordinate with any of that. Yeah, I like being able to write him in a new era. It's more interesting because in the Thrawn trilogy, he's essentially the head of everything, all the Imperials. He's the one in command. He's the one giving all the orders. In this book, he's working his way through the ranks. He has to deal with superiors who don't like him or don't understand him. He's got to deal with all the politics involved in the Empire at its peak. So it's a very different environment he's having to deal with. And it's interesting to put him into that and see how he's going to react, how he's going to maneuver his way through all of this. So no, I liked it. I liked being able to put him in a new era and run him into, bounce him off the edges of what the Rebels were doing. Rebels series. Yeah. No spoilers. Yes, well, when will we get to, that's part of my proposal for book 2. That would be, I have two good hooks in the book for sequels, and I'm trying to milk both of them. So yeah, that is definitely one of the things. That's the end of chapter 2, I think it is. One of the comments, and when I got the manuscript back from Lucasfilm, one of the guys had written, one of his margin notes there was, mic drop. So, so it's nice when we can, impress even Lucasfilm occasionally. Okay.
So, following up on the continuity question, clearly the character is in a new environment. But considering that this is a new continuity, do you approach the character as if you're writing a new character who just happens to resemble the one that you created in '91, or is it the same guy?
As far as I'm concerned, he's the same character. Thrawn is the same, barring, again, the environmental differences and the fact he is 10 to 15 years older in the Thrawn trilogy than he is here. I mean, the continuity is an odd issue. As long as the Thrawn trilogy is not contradicted by something else they do, I think we can kind of pretend it really does still exist. It's kind of like the legend of Thank you. No one told me this back there. Think of it like the legend of Robin Hood. Okay, Robin Hood probably didn't exist, but we still like telling stories and making movies out of it. But if tomorrow somebody in England finds a letter from the Sheriff of Nottingham to Prince John saying, I need help with this Robin Hood guy, suddenly he's not legend anymore, he's part of history. And that is essentially what Lucasfilm can do anytime they want. Picture the flood in the Coruscant record office basement, and all these records got damaged. They don't know if there was a Grand Admiral Thrawn or a Talon Card or Kip Durin or somebody. But if they find another record, oh, we've got this record of him going up against Phoenix Squadron. Okay, I guess he really does exist. Suddenly now he's back into existence in that way. So at that point, the Thrawn trilogy, it's less a legend of Robin Hood than it is a legend of Davy Crockett. A story about somebody who really does officially exist. Another way to think about it is the Thrawn trilogy is a story, you hear around the campfire while you're eating your s'mores. We're a long way from Coruscant. We don't get much news out here. So, have any of you heard the story about Luke Skywalker and Grand Admiral Thrawn? And you hear the story being told late into the night. By the time you get in your sleeping bag, you don't know if it was real, if it's based on something real, just complete made up. But hopefully you thought it was a pretty good story, and you'll be telling it to your kids down the road sometime. So notice also in the crawl, or whatever you call that, from A Force Awakens, they glossed over that whole section of Star Wars history because it wasn't really important. So they are keeping their options open. They're not going to just destroy it. One more thing, something Leland Shee said years before any of this happened. He said, everything in Star Wars is somebody's favorite. Even that giant green marble bunny rabbit. Somebody really likes that bunny rabbit. And so Leland's point of view was, you don't just destroy something because we don't think much of it. You surgically excise stuff you have to, but you don't take a bulldozer or a lawnmower to it. So they are going to be cautious about that. Remember, these guys grew up with the expanded universe in the 90s. This is part of their Star Wars experience. Dave Filoni essentially said that at the Rebels panel in London. So they are going to eliminate anything they need to for the new movies. Chewbacca came back. That means his death in Vector Prime didn't happen. And we're all really kind of happy about that, I think. Also bear in mind, we authors are masters of spackle. If they do something with our characters that makes them different, we can come up with a solution. For example, if Talon Card shows up in a movie or TV show, but he's an alien. Okay, no problem. Two possible explanations. One, Talon Card always was an alien, but didn't like dealing with people, so he had this human guy that was in my books as his front man. Okay? Second possibility, this is the new Talon Card. The other is retired and living in Patagonia for 20 years. The dread pirate lava So whatever they do, we can fix it. Trust me. Okay, other questions?
Bringing back Thrawn from the EU, does this set a precedent so that other characters?
The question was, bringing Thrawn back, does that set a precedent for other characters? Nope. That's the short answer. The long answer is nope. No, it's...
J fans keep crying.
Again, this is all their property. It's all owned by Lucasfilm. They can pull pieces in and out. They've been doing this, for a long time. Coruscant, the name of the planet, was something I originated in Heir to the Empire. The catching of Force lightning on a lightsaber blade was something I did in Dark Force Rising, and they adopted that in the prequels. The double-bladed lightsaber of Darth Maul, I think, showed up in one of the comic books, Dark Horse comic books. So they have been looking at stuff in the expanded universe, and oh, that's cool, I'll put this in the movie, for a long time, a long precedent for that, and they get to, do that. It's theirs. So, they don't need to tell us if there's something with another of my characters in the works. They don't need to tell me. They don't need to ask my permission. Sadly, they don't have to pay me. That's the saddest part of all. But I get bragging rights. I get bragging rights. See, my character. I invented him. And I get to know more books, and it's very cool to be something you've done, to be part of this vast saga that is Star Wars. Okay, it was, yeah, back there.
Just want to say thank you. I grew up in the 90s on your books as well.
Thank you.
And I've been dying ever since, skipping chemistry class in high school to read Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, Last Command. How do you pronounce the Salmari, Jorah Sabath, and Luke with multiple U's?
A Salamir, plural, a Salamiri. Jorus, the kind of a stutter on the W for the clone. Sabaoth. Steady. By the way, the reason I put the double vowel in for the clone is because I knew we were going to have a fight between Luke and his clone in The Last Command. In a movie, you just put them in different clothing and you're good. In a book, I do not want to keep saying clone Luke. It's going to drag things down, it's going to be awkward. So early on, we had the precedent of the double vowel, and then I could do that fight much more efficiently. Anybody else? A Salamiri, Ruch, Sabaoth, Yithron will go? Anything else? Okay, think of anything.
Not Disney, but do you personally have any plans or at least a desire to bring some of your original characters like Thrawn?
The question is whether I would bring other characters of mine back as legends. The fact is they're not going to do any more legends. They've got one timeline, the saga now. It will just be confusing to everybody to try to bring in a parallel or a not necessary real universe. And people say, well, comics do this all the time. Yes, and I'm sure the comics hate having to do it all the time, but they just get themselves so tangled they have to clear cut and reboot periodically. But no, Lucasfilm, as far as I know, has made the decision, no, the legends are the legends. We're going to focus entirely on canon or the Star Wars saga, whatever they prefer to call it, and not try to do parallel things. And I can understand their point of view. I know there are a lot of people who really like the old stories, but unless you can kickstart about $20 billion to buy it back from Disney, and I know they bought it for $4, they got a bargain. That's just the way it is, and we have to take a deep breath and, okay, these are the legends, we get the 150 or so books, we get to enjoy those, and hopefully they will keep bringing out good books in the new line, and we'll learn to be happy with those, and good movies as well. Rogue One was a lot of fun, except everybody, never mind. Spoilers.
Do you mind other people mixing if they're writing their own